Nothing will stand in our way.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
I will finish what you started.
Who are you?
I'm no one. There are stories about what happened.
It's true. All of it.
The Force. It's calling to you.
My nerd road.
Just let it in.
If you had told me after Disney bought Lucasfilm, and welcome to my nerd world. My name is Jon Justice. It is a Star Wars show. Email me, talkshownerd@gmail.com. But if you had told me after Disney purchased Lucasfilm, and even after the release of, say, The Last Jedi, that we would be where we are now relating to what's happened with Star Wars since then. And this place where we really don't know concretely yet where the storytelling is going, despite what Lucasfilm has told us, I would have said you were crazy. Star Wars is the biggest IP on the planet, and there were so many individuals that spoke up after the sale of Star Wars to Disney, Lucasfilm to Disney, that were concerned. And those individuals turned out to be right in a lot of respects. I come to you today with what you've probably already heard, and that is the Acolyte was canceled. I'm not surprised by this at all. I'm just surprised at the place where Star Wars content is right now. I really never thought we would be here. I don't want to wipe out on all the reasons why I think we are where we are with this beloved franchise of which I've been doing a weekly podcast for years now. I mean, I think going back to, close to 10 years maybe, in 2015, 2014. I don't want to wipe out on that. I think it's not one single thing. I think it's a series of things that have happened within, the planet, pandemics and things of that nature, along with politics, just how corporations go and function. I just never thought that it would happen when it comes to Star Wars. I bring all this up because I want to share with you some of what's been going on in the rumor mill and what's been said about the canceling of the Acolyte. I wish that we had storytelling to go and discuss, but unfortunately we just don't right now. I am curious where the storytelling is going to end up going now, especially with the cancellation of the Acolyte and some indications that this may just be wiped from Star Wars canon. I'm not sure we're quite there yet. I imagine you'll still be able to watch it on Disney+, but based off of the observations of some fans, there's individuals now scratching their head over what is going to be the future of that story that was told and whether or not it's actually going to have an impact on the storytelling in the future. So again, if you want to comment, I'd love to hear from you. TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. Leave a comment up on YouTube if you're enjoying the show there. Daniel Rickman is a media, movie, pop culture journalist and typically has good information to share regarding the rumor mill. He posted just yesterday on X that the Lando story is now apparently a film that's been in production for a long time. Rangers of the New Republic was canceled. We kind of all knew that was the case, and a lot of what we would have seen in Rangers of the New Republic has kind of been rolled into The Mandalorian. We saw a bit of that at the end of Mandalorian Season 3. Andor will end with Season 2. We were aware of that. The events of Andor Season 2 are supposed to bring us right up to the beginning of the events in Rogue One. There will be no Mando Season 4, so it looks like some of the speculation that the Mandalorian and Grogu film would be replacing Mandalorian Season 4 have come true. I know that Dave Filoni has been listed with co-writing credit on the Mandalorian and Grogu film. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, because that's an odd place for us to get back to Star Wars, in my opinion, on the big screen. No Boba Fett Season 2. Don't think that's a huge surprise to a lot of people. Of course, as I talked about, there will be no Mandalorian Season 2. The Skeleton Crew, which comes out in December, is a limited series, which means we'll just get the one series of that. I don't know whether or not that speaks good or bad for that series. I did see some rumors going around early on that there was some question marks around it, but I also think it's a little early to know or take any sort of rumors relating to the quality of that series seriously. Ahsoka right now is the only ongoing Star Wars show. No other live-action series has been announced for development. And I think the Ahsoka being the only ongoing Star Wars show makes a lot of sense, because they're going to complete this Mandoverse storytelling, and they're going to have to wrap up that Ahsoka story. My speculation is that Skeleton Crew might play in somewhat to that, potentially. We'll see what kind of time frame the Skeleton Crew covers within the Mandoverse when we get there. Daniel went on to say, let me back up here. So that's all that we had from Daniel, were those rumors right there. I do think it's a little odd that we're going to be getting The Mandalorian and Grogu as our first movie in 2026. It speaks to the concern, in my view, that Disney has, Lucasfilm has, over needing to have a successful movie, since they haven't had a film since The Rise of Skywalker. It appears to be a very safe bet to do this Mandalorian and Grogu film. I question, though, is it going to be a safe bet? People have come accustomed to watching The Mandalorian and Grogu on television. We know that it gets good ratings. It's probably the most popular of the Lucasfilm, Disney Plus, live-action Star Wars streaming shows. I'm just wondering, with so much time having passed and no cliffhanger to be solved in a film relating to the end of Mandalorian Season 3, if The Mandalorian and Grogu is going to be a big enough draw to achieve box office success. Now, we know, and I'll talk a little bit more in a second, that films can be of high quality with a very low budget. Alien Romulus is $80 million. That's how much it cost to make that film. Now, granted, it's limited in scale. You're basically going to two different locales within the film. It was originally supposed to be released on Hulu, but they decided to make it a theatrical release, and I'm glad that they did, because it plays amazing on the big screen. I would think that The Mandalorian and Grogu would be a little bit more expansive than that and require a little bit more money. But when you compare what a quality film, in my opinion, Alien Romulus is at $80 million, and if you missed my review, it's on this feed last week. So if you happen to miss it, go into the My Nerd World feed, and you'll find it between last week's episode and this episode that you're now currently enjoying. But you compare it to Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny and the millions of dollars that ended up costing, and it just didn't show up on the big screen, and they didn't get the box office returns that they were looking for. I think Lucasfilm and Disney are incredibly jittery about the future of Star Wars, and they have good reason to be. Quite honestly, I don't know what the fans are even going to want now. We've completed the storytelling relating to the Skywalker saga. Typically, the hype leading into a Star Wars theatrical release was because of what's come before it in terms of the storytelling. And even despite the controversy surrounding the sequel trilogy, certainly with The Last Jedi and then what a lot of people didn't care for in The Rise of Skywalker, even though I enjoyed that movie quite a bit, there was still this, okay, we got to complete this story, this expectation of these characters and what's going to happen with them. We're supposed to be getting this Daisy Ridley post The Rise of Skywalker film, but it's not necessarily, from what we've been told, going to have any direct connective thread. It's not an extension of the Skywalker story, even though I think it's really stupid to do that. They should just call it Episode 10. But right now, there's been so much silence around that film, I'm wondering if my prediction that Obaid Chinoy, the director, isn't going to be the director of that movie. So I think that Disney is incredibly cautious, Lucasfilm is incredibly cautious, and unfortunately, it's of their own fault, and it's to the detriment of we fans. Now, on the positive note, the great thing about Star Wars is that we have plenty of content to enjoy, regardless of what comes next. I enjoy Ahsoka quite a bit. I'm excited that we're going to be getting an Ahsoka season 2. But I just got done watching all of the Alien films. After pre and post seeing Alien Romulus, and I may go see that again this weekend. And it's funny how disjointed all of those movies are. I enjoy aspects of each of those films, even though I don't like some of those films in their totality. I enjoy aspects of them. But, you know, they're all very sort of disjointed in terms of flowing from one film to the next, especially when it comes to Aliens through Alien Resurrection. And yet now we can kind of look at Star Wars and make a similar argument. So relating to The Acolyte, Deadline reported that it simply could not sustain its momentum despite a decent start, dropping out of the top 10 in week 3 and staying off and out of the top 10 before returning to number 10 after the release of the finale. 335 minutes believed to be the lowest for a Star Wars series finale. 335 million minutes. That's how many minutes were watched. That's how they calculate the streaming numbers now. Like fellow global streamers, Netflix and Prime Video, Disney Plus has a high viewership threshold for renewing high-end, big-budget series that cost well above 100 million per season to make. And the word was that The Acolyte cost $180 million to make. And I'm just wondering where the money went. Because the quality certainly didn't reflect $180 million. At $180 million for the season, and I know we're looking at 8 episodes, but they weren't long episodes, and it's a little unfair to go and compare Alien Romulus at a 2 hour and 10 minutes at $80 million versus The Acolyte, which I think comes in somewhere around 4 hours or something like this. But it should show a little bit more, and it looked like a television show. Or probably a better example to put it up against would be House of the Dragon, which does have a television vibe to it, but it's still very theatrical. I could go watch that on the big screen. I can't see The Acolyte going and translating to the big screen. And the same thing kind of rings true to Ahsoka. They're very similar in terms of being television shows. I think Ahsoka would look better on the big screen, but one has to wonder, where is all that money actually going? So I guess the big question is, what is the future of Star Wars going to be, and are they going to be able to go and figure this out? I find the comparison to Avatar to be very interesting, and I'm wondering if all those people that I disagreed with were right, and that is the oversaturation of Star Wars could be its downfall. Star Wars has a lasting impact within the culture, and it has ever since it first arrived on screens back in 1977, and it's been able to sustain that popularity and that fandom. And yet, I'm not sure there's any Star Wars film that you could put out today, regardless, that could match the global success of James Cameron's next Avatar movie. A lot of people thought that Avatar: The Way of Water was going to be a flop, and it was a blockbuster by every definition, made all the money. But it's interesting because Avatar doesn't really saturate into the culture the way Star Wars does. It does raise the question in my mind about scarcity. And I heard an argument not too long ago of somebody that said that Star Wars needs like a 10-year break when they do these trilogies to let people forget about it and then be excited when it comes again. Unfortunately, now so many people are jaded over Star Wars because of the lack of quality of live-action streaming content that there's a lot of skepticism in the fans, which creates that jitteriness coming from Lucasfilm. On top of the fact that there are Acolyte fans now that are worrying the entire show might disappear. I'm looking at this story here. For fans of the Acolyte, their twisted journey and the main characters of Chimere and Osha along the dark side of the Force, the Acolyte not getting renewed for a second season. Some people are worried the first season might disappear from Disney Plus as well after the show's merchandise was removed from an online shop. News of the erased merchandise, including sweaters, shirts, and other clothing with images from the show, started circulating on social media on Wednesday, with fans noticing that the Disney Store pages, which were still searchable in Google, now returned page not found when they tried to click through. The mysterious disappearance came just a day after Disney announced that Star Wars The Acolyte wouldn't be getting a second season, with the timing leading some fans of the Embattled Jedi show to begin fearing the worst after what happened to the fantasy show Willow just last year. Willow, of course, a follow-up to the cold 80s fantasy movie starring Val Kilmer, debuted on Disney Plus in 2022. Following March, the company confirmed the show wouldn't be getting a second season, even though one was already written. Even worse, the entire first season of the show was excised from the company's streaming library only months later in a wave of cost-cutting measures. Some Star Wars fans think concern over the disappeared merchandise is overblown. Hasbro action figures for Osha and more remain available on Amazon and other storefronts. There doesn't appear to have been a whole lot of Acolyte merch on the Disney Store in the first place, with the central piece, a replica of the Stranger's Sith-inspired helmet, selling out long ago. It's possible the remaining Acolyte items weren't selling well, and the turnover was just a normal move after Disney decided it was no longer investing in the future of the show and its characters. Still, the precedent was set with Willow and other shows on streaming services like Max has some Acolyte stands bracing for the show to be deleted altogether. It would be especially weird if Disney tried to pretend that the events of the Acolyte weren't canon, erasing it not just from streaming but from the broader Star Wars lore as well. Now, there could be, as the article mentioned, a relatively benign reason for this. I think a lot of the merchandise these days is created on demand, in which case, if there's not a lot of demand, then why bother going and keeping the merchandise available? Although, I think the argument would be that at least after its cancellation, there would be an immediate uptick in fans that would want to get their hands on Acolyte gear just to have it as a keepsake and collector's item. So we'll see what happens with that later on. I was unaware that Willow was actually scrubbed from Disney Plus. I was just online before I started the podcast, and I saw that there are already these efforts underway on Facebook and on X to sign petitions to bring the Acolyte back, with comments like, "We can't let the haters win." Okay, first off, yes, there was a lot of controversy around the Acolyte. Yes, I think a lot of that controversy was warranted. I personally did enjoy a lot of aspects of the Acolyte. I'll go back and watch it again. I think it had really high highs, but the lows were really low, unfortunately. But it wasn't the fan criticism that doomed it. This just shows the fan criticism was actually real, because those fans that were criticizing it still watched the entire series because they needed to go and talk about it. Now, they were talking about it negatively, but they still needed to go and talk about it. So it really was just the quality of the show that people didn't like. Those low lows, I think, were too low for a lot of people. Disjointed storytelling. I'm willing to forgive a lot of that because of my love for Star Wars, and I'm willing to look past a lot of that. There's a lot of goofy in Star Wars. I talked about that with Zach from the Knights of Vader podcast. And there's a lot of goofy in the Acolyte. I'm not surprised that it's not getting a second season. I'm not necessarily bummed it's not getting a second season because I want to see the quality return to Star Wars. I want to see this beloved franchise get back to where it's at a place where the fans at least can develop some sort of consensus around the majority of the products. And it's not just with Star Wars either. I mean, we've seen other IPs that have gone through these similar strains for very similar reasons, especially when you specifically go and look at Marvel. You look at what's happened with DC. The world had been turned upside down, and I don't think the world has been turned right side up yet. We're still all dealing with that. We'll see how The Mandalorian and Grogu does. I'm excited for it. I'm excited for all the Star Wars content. I'm excited for the Skeleton Crew later this year. I'm just sitting back as a fan, surprised that we're even having this conversation. Because I brought up the Alien franchise because I never thought I would compare the disjointedness of the Alien franchise, which I also love, to Star Wars, and yet here we are. It is disjointed. I think the biggest problem that people had with one of the issues that people had with the Acolyte was just this desire they had to sort of poke the bear relating to the canon aspect of the storytelling. And why are you messing in those places at all? I mean, that's just one little facet of it, but it's something that popped into my head as I was formulating my thoughts as to why the Acolyte failed. I mean, that was one reason why, but there was an arrogance about it. And I said this before. I still believe that if they hadn't had so much commentary from the actors, from the showrunner, Leslie Headland, if a lot of people had gone into this show blind without preconceived notions, it would have been received in a better way than what it was. But of course, that didn't happen, and here we are talking about the fact that the Acolyte Season 2 has been canceled, which again should not come as a surprise to anyone. Well, what do you think? Where's the future of Star Wars going? Do you think The Mandalorian and Grogu has a chance to be a huge success? I'm skeptical. Star Wars needs to be big and epic. I saw the trailer from D23. I thought it looked rad, but there is a storytelling element that people expect in the theatrical releases to tell a large, sweeping story. It's one of the things that I do like about the Mandoverse aspect, is that we are building with the return of Thrawn and with Ahsoka to a large-scale story that has galactic implications. If The Mandalorian and Grogu is just going to be a one-off adventure that is a 2-hour condensed version of what Mandalorian Season 4 is without larger stakes involved, I'm wondering if it's going to end up having a level of success closer to, say, Solo than what we ended up seeing with the success of the final film of the franchise, and that is The Rise of Skywalker. TalkShowNerd@gmail.com is the email address. I'm thinking about what I want to watch this weekend because I'm all aliened out. I think I might go. I was doing a rewatch of Ahsoka again, and I've mentioned it many times. I just really, really love that series, and so maybe I'll do some watching of Ahsoka. Who knows? Maybe I'll go back and watch some of my favorite episodes of The Acolyte in honor of its demise. But I do look forward to hearing from you, and I hope you'll write in and share your thoughts based off of this episode. TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. And, of course, if you're enjoying this on YouTube, be sure to leave a comment there. Next week on the show, I'm really excited. We weren't able to make it happen this week, but next week I will be teaming up with Star Wars Santa. So if you're on YouTube, I hope you'll go and find Star Wars Santa. He puts up some amazing content. He has read my book, and I'm really excited to hear his thoughts. I know he's on book 2, Treasure in Darkness now, which has me even more excited. If you get through book 1, he made it to book 2, so that has me jazzed. So I'll be talking with him and Star Wars next week, probably out Thursday or Friday. So I'm really looking forward to finally teaming up and talking with Star Wars Santa here on the My Nerd World Star Wars podcast. Speaking of my science fiction series, I hope you'll take a moment and check it out. While Earth faces its end, the fight to rule the stars begins. When Taft Guardia agrees to help fellow hotshot starfighter pilot Keith Amaro investigate a cryptic message from her late aerospace engineer father, they embark on a mission to uncover the truth behind her father's mysterious death and a looming planet-wide industrial catastrophe. With rival megacorporations D-Corp and Enercon on the brink of war during the global evacuation, Taft and Keitha must race to uncover the key to saving humanity and each other from annihilation before it's too late. There are 7 books in all in the series. What you just heard there is the description for book 1. Treat yourself, a friend, or a family member who enjoy science fiction with science fiction, written for adults, but it is completely appropriate for ages 11 plus. I hope you'll take a moment and pick up EMBARK Book 1 today. The entire series is available in ebook, Kindle Unlimited, hardcover, paperback, and audiobook. If you like your science fiction space opera to be epic with some really cool technology filled with romance and action, EMBARK is perfect for you. Go to Amazon.com and search for Jon Justice, Jon, and EMBARK, and you'll find the books there. Thank you so much for checking out the podcast. I hope you'll drop me an email. And wherever you are happy, you're healthy, you're safe. I'll talk to you next week. God bless.
The Force will be with you, always.
My nerd world.